Caleb Hammer has one of the fastest growing channels on YouTube today. What does he do? He brings people onto his show that are okay sharing their finances with the world, and he rips them apart.
Car wash? Yeah, it's a wash. Why are we washing if we have $5 in a checking account? We're not washing our car. I don't give a shit if your car has this car that you can't even afford. You can't even afford this car. Why are we washing the car that you can't afford washing the car? F you washing the car. We can't afford it.
It's right. It can't be dirty.
Yes, it can be. Who gives a shit? You are not making purchases on a card where you're losing $222 on a monthly basis, right? Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Right. So again, it doesn't make sense. The only reason, usually I don't get angry at people, I get angry at the debt, but I'm a little angry at you because you're just justify. Late fee of $29. What are you laughing about a late fee for? We can't be laughing about late fees.
Okay, that might be a little misleading. He's actually a really nice guy who just wants to educate people on personal finance. So he creates a financial plan for his guests on the spot and allows them to follow up with him and his team on an ongoing basis until they achieve their financial goals. In fact, his videos make him seem a little direct at times, but he goes as far as paying for people's rent and for their therapy sessions.
Yeah. We had a dude unfortunately experiencing homelessness on recently, and I gifted him his first 2 months of rent. I gifted him a refrigerator for his current situation so he didn't have to eat out all the time. And then also I offered to pay for his first 4 therapy sessions because he has some really critical depressions.
His content is very entertaining, but his videos are long and can be overwhelming if you don't have a passion for personal finance. So I sat down and watched all of his videos to answer one simple question. Why do people become poor? Every person sitting with $1 million or more in their bank account today became rich in different ways. Some did it by starting a business or joining a startup. Some did it through investing. Some did it by climbing the corporate ladder, and so on. There are millions of ways to make millions, but there's only a few ways to be broke. So learning what not to do is more important than learning what to do. And if you don't want to end up like this guy.
My name is David Henson. I'm from Austin, Texas, Lakeway area. I'm 52 years old.
What is in your checking account right now? Your personal checking account?
Pennies.
Okay. What is in your savings? Personal savings?
I mean, there's no cash.
Well, okay. So how much equity do you have in properties?
You know, nothing.
Oh.
Then you have to watch this video because people who are worth millions of dollars don't do any of the things we're going to cover in this video, which means you shouldn't either. Let's dive in.
That brings us to about $48,000 a year before taxes, or about $4,000 a month before taxes. Does that sound about right to you?
Sure. I'm not sure.
Well, dude, I'm confused.
What?
The f is this? You started the beginning balance of your checking account was negative $236. Negative $236. What's up?
I actually didn't know that there was a negative balance ever on there.
That even makes me more upset. How do you not know?
In the majority of videos, people didn't know either how much money they were making or they didn't know how much they had in their bank account, which clearly shows that guests aren't making purchases based on how much money they have. They're making purchases based on what they feel like purchasing, regardless of price. This is only where the problem begins, because I watched guest after guest make excuses for why they needed to make the purchases they made, and it was entertaining to watch. These next 6 excuses were the most common ones I saw.
Basically, the biggest chunk of it all really started whenever I was out of a job for about 2 months and my roommate had been out of a job.
2 months?
Yeah. Well, okay, that's not all of it. Probably about like 3-4 grand all happened within that 2 months.
How do you feel about the spending so far? We're only 2 accounts in and we've spent $2,500 basically.
Yeah, the last month with moving was probably not where I would like to be.
People blame losing a job as one of the biggest excuses for starting down a bad path financially. And if they didn't lose their job, then they blame the fact that they had to move. No doubt, these two situations are tough. If you don't have a job or you have to move, then you have to rely on your savings. But none of these guests had savings. So rather than owning up to the fact that they didn't save when they had the chance, they blamed it on their circumstances.
What's the overall balance on this BMW?
Like 56.
56, 57?
56.
56.
What's the minimum monthly payment?
1,140.
Oh my! I've never. 1,100 what?
49.
Oh, you poor lads. What's the truck?
It's a 2012 Ford F-150.
What is the total balance owed on this Ford F-150? 23,500. Yeah. What's your minimum monthly payment?
720.
Oh, kill me, guys.
Another excuse I saw was that everyone in a bad financial situation had a huge car loan. In this example, this couple had 6 accounts and collections and had almost no money left to their name, yet they had car payments of over $1,500 per month. No one put a gun to their head and forced them to buy a BMW or a truck.
You know why you didn't have the money, Bird Biscuit?
Because I'm poor.
No! What are you talking about?
What do you mean?
That's gonna piss me off because you're poor. You've spent more than triple what the balance is on here on bull.
On food.
On bull. That's bull.
I mean, to some degree.
What do you mean?
Well, I need food to live.
How do you just say that again, even though we've clearly talked about last time how you can meal prep for 1/4 of the cost on a weekly basis, maybe 1/5 or 1/6 of the cost on a weekly basis? What is this? You need food. You did not need Bird Biscuit for your caloric intake on a daily basis to survive.
That's fair.
Why the possibly are you going and getting like Red Wing shoes?
Well, the story on that one is my job reimburses $100 of a pair of work boots.
Okay.
So that got reimbursed.
$100 though. You spent $323.
I know.
Why don't you get a $100 pair of shoes?
Almost everyone claimed that they either didn't have time to cook food or they just thought it was more convenient or made them happy to eat out, while a huge mountain of credit card debt was piling up. And if they weren't overspending on food, they were overspending on nice clothes, shoes, or accessories. Unless you're working 18 hours every day, then you have time to cook food. And I think it's obvious that you can shop at a discount clothing place to find something to wear.
Your net worth is negative, if I'm not mistaken. We'll go through and find out.
Definitely.
It's like, okay, so you haven't corrected that situation.
No.
Are you just trying to make up for everything?
I don't know, man. I honestly, a lot of it was just like kind of no expectations to live for a long time.
Why does everyone say that? Why is that like a thing? Like every other person on the show.
So many guests expected to not live long, which is just living in denial. Millennials and Gen Zs are expected to live close to 100 years old.
But I didn't realize how much I ate out for sure.
Because you don't budget. Because you're not responsible. That's not a put down. You're just not responsible.
No, I know.
Just throwing out
I'm a
as a
20-year-old just spending everything
All
I
right,
got.
don't use your age as an excuse. I don't find that. That's disgusting.
But most people my age, we're all like this. Not saying it's okay.
Most
but
Americans in our any age are in massive amounts of terrible debt. Don't compare
So
yourself
I'm like a
to the
step
worst
up
of the
from that.
worst. Okay, but again, don't
step up from the
Don't
average.
compare yourself to the worst of the worst. Try to be good.
But deep down, the biggest excuse was people justify their bad spending by saying they just do what everyone else is doing, or they compare themselves to people around them and think, well, at least I'm not as bad as them. These 5 excuses were the most common ones I saw across all the videos I watched. So if you see yourself making any of these excuses, you need to stop. But excuses can sometimes feel very real in the moment, and you won't think twice about them until you understand how these excuses stack up and affect you in the long term.
Okay, so you didn't have a fully funded emergency fund. You got laid off. What was the gap between first job, second job?
It was like, I turned in my 2 weeks notice, so I was set up to go like 2 weeks and start the next one. I didn't have a gap,
And also this shows, again, not having an emergency fund is an emergency. You did not have an emergency, even though you had a next job lined up, which is incredible. 2 weeks, man. We got to be able to get you to survive for 2 weeks. That shouldn't be complicated.
We had $36,000 in our emergency fund.
Yeah.
And all of that money is gone.
Where did it go?
It went to emergencies.
What were the emergencies?
We needed to remodel a bathroom.
It's not an emergency.
The reality is, when people lost their job or had to move, they didn't have an emergency fund. Or even worse, they did have an emergency fund, and once again, they didn't think about the possibility of losing their job or having to move. So they decided to spend it on unnecessary things. Had they had some savings when times got tough, they would have had something to fall back on. And to make matters worse,
I could get you that easily working a job in Austin.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather do that instead of just sitting on your butt? Well, I mean, the amount of time that I have to like apply and then research companies, and then every company has like their own tech stack they want you to know. So
It's not just tech, buddy.
Yeah.
It's other jobs right now. Any other job.
yeah, I don't know.
I want you to fucking like be an adult. You know?
But I feel like the time is kind of wasted if I go and do something unrelated and then take a huge like income hit.
Income hit. Your income zero. Your income zero.
Yeah,
What is the logic here? What is the logic?
I guess none.
Not only did they not have an emergency fund, but people consistently refused to get a simple job like Ubering, DoorDashing, bartending, or serving. They justified it by saying it was below their pay grade or a waste of time, when in reality, it would have at least given them some money to prevent them from going completely broke. And I understand why it's hard.
You, with your rent, with your food, with everything that is required with different payments, say you need a minimum $1,750 in your hand to just survive on a monthly basis, I think you need to have at least $15,000 sitting in that account that is literally never touched. It is never touched. That's what needs to be there, and you don't have that right now.
That would be awesome, but no, I don't. And that would take a long time for that to save up.
Saving an emergency fund takes a long time, and most people don't realize how long it actually takes. Sometimes when you're dead broke, it can take a year or two before you get back to a safe level of cash in your bank account. But 1 or 2 years is nothing if you're expected to live to 100 years old. That's literally only 2% of your life. When you start down this bad financial path, you think in your mind that these little purchases don't add up to much. And when you aren't making any progress on your debt and you lose your job or big expenses come up, you're still in the denial phase. You think it's impossible to cut back on these little conveniences because it's the only thing that's making you happy in this terrible situation. But as your debt payments increase, you actually are forced to cut back on things you thought were impossible to cut back on because now you actually have no money left to spend. So if you see yourself headed down this path, I can promise you this: you'll hit rock bottom eventually unless you make the decision to change. So what common advice does Caleb give to people to help them get out of this situation?
Okay, so in order for you to survive, you need $2,600. What I would do for 2.5 months, put $1,000 away on the side. Don't touch it. 2.5 months, you have $2,668. That's what you need to survive for a month. So that's set aside just in case an emergency happens.
The most common recommendation I see him give is to start by saving up a 1-month emergency fund.
So now we have $1,500 left. Woo! We obviously attack the evil $820 first. Because right now that interest rate is insanity and is not even close to anything.
He then typically recommends tackling high interest rate debt, which usually comes from credit cards or personal loans. Sometimes he'll tackle debt from highest percentage to smallest percentage, and sometimes he'll recommend tackling smallest debt balance to largest debt balance. It just depends on the person.
I would then, for the next 4 months, continue that aggressiveness. So now we're looking at, 6 plus 4 months, $10,000 saved up in cash that you're never touching. Okay?
$10,000.
$10,000 is saved up in cash. Good with that so far?
Yeah.
Cool.
And then he typically has them build a complete emergency fund. These are the common 3 steps I see him talk to guests about with the worst finances. So I hope you realize that at some point, cutting back on unnecessary things is going to be a decision you make or gets made for you. But what do Caleb or I know? We're just 2 young guys with a passion for finance. So if you think we're full of crap, then sometimes it's easier to listen to a person who's made hundreds of millions of dollars in their life. And recently, a guy who owns his own island released a video detailing his thoughts on money. So check out this video next if you want to hear the top advice a billionaire gives on money, because he clearly has done something right in his life.